Sometimes when you watch a team extensively, you can understand why they are in the position with the personnel group that you're not happy with, but still not like it. And that's what I find myself being about the defensive tackles right now on the Browns roster. Do I understand why this roster is assembled in this way? 100%. I get what they're doing. They run a 4-2-5 basically. Well, they run a 4-3, but they really run a 4-2-5 most of the time. They like to be in nickel. They don't really emphasize the defensive line outside of the edge rushers. And since Miles and Jadeveon can go inside and out, they feel like there is less of a sense of urgency to fill this position. But that being said, I think that this is still undervalued to a point that it could become problematic if you don't become fortunate with some young players stepping up or making either huge leaps or just being tremendous in their first year. Either way, I think we're asking way too much out of some of the players in the interior, straight up. But this is a position real. You know how we do. We're going to go through every single player listed currently on the defensive interior, talk about them briefly, and talk about where the Browns could be better and what they're doing right. So the first player we're going to talk about is number 63, Greg Logan. He is a defensive tackle from LSU, 6'3", 339 pounds. I believe he's undrafted. He's the only big body right now that the Browns really have, right? If you look at their defensive tackle room, other than Greg Logan, everybody's under 315. Yeah, most of them are at about 300 pounds, but everybody's about under 315. So no 330, no 340 guys. If you know what I was thinking in the draft, I wanted the Browns to get both Perrion and Jordan Davis when they had a first-round pick. If they couldn't get that, I wanted Travis Jones and Perrion Winfrey. I wanted to get bodies for this defensive line room because I feel like the Browns have been rotating in and out a lot of piecemeal solutions in the interior, and it hasn't worked out. And I think that's why you see the production dip for Miles at the end of the year every year because he doesn't get a lot of help to begin with, right? Whenever people compare Miles's numbers to TJ Watt, they don't consider that TJ Watt has significantly more help from a schematic standpoint and from just a personnel standpoint, right? The help in the interior that he gets from Cam Hayward and what was Stephon Tuitt has been tremendous. And then you look at the scheme that he runs, he's hardly ever rushing with just 4 down linemen. Myles Garrett is always rushing with only 4 down linemen. He hardly ever gets an extra blitzer. Sometimes he gets a linebacker, sometimes he gets a DB, but it's hardly ever a heavy front or anything like that like TJ Watt gets, which is why Watt can get more sacks than Myles Garrett. But Myles Garrett can be the better player, have the better win rate, have the better pressure numbers because, again, they're asked to do 2 different things, and what Miles is asked to do isn't going to be as sack heavy. And when you don't have that help in the interior and you don't have that help schematically, because this is not a blitz heavy defense, you end up in a situation that Miles is at the end of the year where people think he's not being productive because he's just not getting sufficient help. And I felt like if I were the Cleveland Browns, I would do everything to support that position, but they think that they have enough. We'll see how this turns out. Roderick Perry is the next player we're going to talk about. 6'1", 304 out of Illinois, another undrafted guy. Again, I don't expect Greg Logan or Roderick Perry to make the team, even though, to be honest with you, the group is so bad at the bottom when it comes to the interior, right? I don't know what if there's even that big of a gap between a Greg Logan, a Roderick Perry, and then who else are we talking about here? Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott. I don't know what the gap is there. It hasn't been impressive what we've seen out of Togiai. It hasn't been impressive what we've seen out of Jordan Elliott, and we'll get to that when we get to that. Now, I know you guys hear me talk, it sounds really negative right now. Let's get to some positive stuff. And this is Perrion Winfrey. Now, Perrion Winfrey is an interesting case with 22 years old, 6'4", 290. The measurables are off the charts with him. He has a 7-foot wingspan. Great wingspan for his size. Great 10-yard split. Under 5-second 40 for his size. Again, he's a pretty impressive athlete. His tape, on the other hand, if you look at his Oklahoma stuff, there's some things that you really like there, but there's some things that you really don't like there with Perrion Winfrey, right? Some technique things you think you can coach up, which, again, for me, whenever I evaluate a defensive lineman especially, I really care less about the technique. I think that's something that can be taught in a relative short amount of time. I don't think that that's something that should preclude you from drafting a player. How many times have we seen these high technique players come out of college not be talented enough to be sufficient pass rushers, right? They did this with Derek Barnett. If you're a Browns fan from the past, you remember Nate Orchard came out of the league, the most polished guy in the draft. It didn't really do anything for both of those guys because polish in college means nothing when it comes to the NFL. I'd rather you be raw, super talented, like a Odafe Owe, and then come in here and have to be taught certain things than, know it all, but not have any of the twitch. So that's a preference thing with Perrion. That's why some people were out on him. His Oklahoma tape, it was up and down and underwhelming if you consider the fact that he was the #1 JUCO player coming out. Also comes from a JUCO background. Maybe that factored in on why some teams were out on him. None of that stuff I cared about, but maybe some other teams did care about with Perrion. And then the interesting thing with Perrion is that he looked like a completely different player once you got him into the Senior Bowl. Now, this could be one of two things, right? This could either be Perrion Winfrey realizing that it's time to make some money, and he just had a big Senior Bowl because he needed to have that to make money, right? It might be a contract year situation with Perrion Winfrey on why he looks so great at the Senior Bowl. Or it could be that that's just what he looks like when you put him at 3-tech. Because he did not play much 3-tech at Oklahoma. He played a lot of 1-tech, a lot of 0-tech. Didn't play a lot of 3-tech. And with Perrion, the hope is for me is that once camp starts and you get the pads on, you line him up at 3-tech against the 3s or the 2s or wherever you're going to start him at. I find it hard to believe he's going to be behind Tommy Togiai or Jordan Elliott, but maybe you start him under Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott just as kind of a rookie thing in camp. You put him at 3-tech, he should win those battles. If he's winning those battles, you put him with the 2s, he wins those battles, cool, then you got to put him with the 1s, and then he can learn from there, right? Like, I think that is more or less what is going to go down with Perrion Winfrey during camp. And if he continues to win those battles, I think he'll be ready to start year one. Now, will he be a tremendous deep? Like, I don't know how good he's going to be, but will he be good enough to start for this team? I think there's a high chance of that just because I don't think the bar is super high for what a starter should be right now. So I don't want to set the expectations on fire. I know I'm a big Perrion Winfrey fan, so I have to be careful with my optimism about it. Like, I've been big on him since the Senior Bowl. I think he can develop into a great player. I don't know if that necessarily means that he's going to be that player that I hope he's going to be in year one. I think that's a lot to put on Perrion Winfrey. I think eventually he gets there. Year 2, year 3, I think he definitely gets there. This 1 year right now, I don't know. But I think he could get close enough to be a starter this year and really show you that he's going to be one of the mainstays on this defensive line. That is the hope, right? And that's probably the best hope that you have on this defensive line, which is the issue with how it's been constructed over the years, right? I've talked about this for years. My problem with the 1-year contract guys, the Sheldon Richardsons, the Malik Jacksons, where you're bringing these guys to be Band-Aid solutions and you don't really have anybody developing underneath them. You end up in a situation like you are today where you don't like any of the Band-Aid solutions that are out there right now. And you end up with a bunch of young guys that have to prove it at a very pivotal position. Not a great spot, right? I've been I've given Andrew Berry a lot of praise over the years, especially recently. This is one of those areas where I question him just a little bit because I think it's fair to question him on this one because the production hasn't been there from the interior. We'll see, though. Tommy Togiai is the next guy we're going to talk about. Had a 39.8 Pro Football Focus grade, which is abysmal. I mean, just straight up abysmal. was pretty bad in run defense. I don't know. He's small, right? Like he's 6'2", 300 pounds. To be fair to him, right? He got 65 pass rush snaps, and he was pretty decent there. That's really his only use is going to be in pass rush situations for a guy that size. Again, we'll see. He's also 22, about to be 23 once the season starts. I'm a little concerned about Tommy Togiai, to be honest with you. Taven Bryan's another. Well, he's not the next guy, actually. Jordan Elliott's the next guy we're going to talk about. 41.6 Pro Football Focus grade, rated 102 out of 109 defensive interior players. It's abysmal. 45 Pro Football Focus grade in run defense. 50 in pass rushing. I don't know what to do with that, man. He had 500 snaps. I don't know what you do. Right? For him to be a decent player at this point, right? And I'm not trying to be mean to Jordan Elliott, but I'm just trying to spit facts here. For Jordan Elliott to become a decent player will require him to make a astronomical jump at this point. I don't think it's there. Right? Like, I'm not even talking about him being a Pro Bowl player. I'm not talking about him being a good player. I'm talking about for him to be an average player, he would have to jump his Pro Football Focus grade up 20 points from a year where he had 464 snaps. That's not nothing. That is a significant amount of snaps to have that low of a grade. Like, I can't just throw that out. I don't know what you do with Jordan Elliott. I really don't. I think he should probably be battling to make the team, but I also don't think the room's good enough for him to be battling to make the team. That's a problem, right? That is a significant problem. I mean, 41.6. Like Tommy Togiai, he has an awful grade at 39.8, but he's only been out there 125 times. When you are out there 464 times, and you put up a 41.6, I don't know if I'm supposed to still believe in that. Like, that's just a real head scratcher to me, right? Is Jordan Elliott. I didn't like the pick coming out of college, so maybe I'm biased here, but still, man, like he's almost 25, right? He's going to be 25 by the end of the year. And he showed no promise in 3 years. I don't know what we're doing here with Jordan Elliott. At this point, I think it's time to move on and see if somebody else can step up, because it's not like he didn't get playing time, right? He's had bad grades the season before, and in his rookie year, he had bad grades, and that's fine. Well, his rookie year, he had a bad grade, and then this year he had bad grades, which is fine. His rookie year is fine, at least, because he didn't play that much, but come on, man. Like, it would take such a leap for him to be a decent player that I don't know if it's there anymore. I really don't. That's a problem. Jordan Elliott is a certified issue for this defensive line, and that's not in a good way. All right, the next player is Taven Bryan. Taven Bryan, he was a former first-round pick in 2018, I believe. He comes in at 6'4", 291. Again, similar profile to everybody else. He's going to be more of a pass rush threat. That's what they want these defensive tackles to be now. But we'll see. We'll see with Taven Bryan. I think they're really gambling on him. Comes in with a 56.4 Pro Football Focus grade. So for him to get to average, it's not going to be a significant jump that he has to make. Only had 301 snaps last year. Keep in mind now that Jordan Elliott had the most snaps out of anybody in this defensive tackle room right now. That's another problem that they have. There are red flags in this interior of this defensive line. I'm going to keep it real. There are red flags here, right? The fact that Jordan Elliott has the most snaps and the fact that he is by far the worst player is interesting, right? You may argue that Tommy Togiai is worse, but like even that's not good. That's not a good situation. With Taven Bryan, we'll see with him. I think they're gambling on him, see if he can take a step, see if he can get some things right, if he has some more support. I think you're probably going to go into the season with the defensive line rotation. It's going to be Perrion, Sheldon Day, Taven Bryan, and whoever between Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai that they feel like. Honestly, whoever between Jordan Elliott, Tommy Togiai, Roderick Perry the second, and Glenn Logan. Or maybe they signed somebody. I'm thinking this. I'm thinking maybe during camp Perrion looks okay. And maybe they like Taven Bryan a little bit, but they're not seeing anything out of Tommy that's giving them any enjoyment, or they're not seeing something out of Taven, or maybe they're not seeing something out of Jordan, and that's when they make a move for a veteran defensive tackle. I don't think it's Ndamukong Suh. I don't think that makes much sense at this point, but I do think they would make a move to get somebody, probably somebody that nobody really knows that well, that's been pretty solid. Those guys are the guys that tend to pop up. Hopefully somebody has a surplus of defensive tackles. They have to cut one because the Browns are probably going to need one. But yeah, it's kind of that situation there, man. It's not a great spot. I think the interior is a little bit in trouble. Sheldon Day's your best ranked player, 64.7 Pro Football Focus grade, 233 snaps. So a little bit of a question of sample size there with only 200 something snaps. But again, Sheldon Day, he should probably be your fourth or third best defensive tackle, and he's a nice rotation guy. He shouldn't be your number one. And that's an issue, right? If you have to start Sheldon Day and Perrion Winfrey, ideally, those are guys you would want to have rotate in, not necessarily start in, especially for Perrion year one, unless he's super ready, right? Like you want to bring these guys along slowly. So I think they can possibly get two starters out of this group. I don't know if you have two backups in this group, to be honest with you. I don't think you have two guys right now who are good enough to be backups. I think you're going to have to find these guys, but we'll see what happens during camp. That's my review of this situation. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.